Hey, everybody, welcome to the Awakener podcast. It's good to be with you today. I'm back. This is the new setup. This is kind of the new gig, and this is what it's going to be going forward. Unfortunately, we ran into some issues, mainly with do with time and obviously censorship. And unfortunately, all our podcasts are going to be taken down all across Lisbon, which is obviously iTunes, any kind of audio only podcast. It's unfortunate. This is something, if you've listened to my show for a long time, and I know a lot of you guys have, this is something that we have faced from the beginning of the show. I started out, we had 10,000 subscribers very easily on YouTube and then taken away. Spotify was taken away. And this is just kind of the battle that it's been off and on for quite some time. Things get posted or they don't get posted. Things get taken down. I offend some people, and then people report me on Spotify, and then that's removed. And it's just the way that it is, ladies and gentlemen. So going forward, this is the new setup. You're going to have me more often, mainly because I'm doing this from home. It's going to be easier for all of you guys to listen because I'll have more content more frequently. Anytime that I kind of go on a rant at home or kind of get in creative juices, you're going to have better podcasts. I don't have to go all the way up to the recording studio. And then if I'm not in the mood and something doesn't come to light in my mind, you kind of are going to get the best stuff going forward. So go to theawakener.ca. You can see all the information there. You can subscribe to the podcast, see all the blog posts. I'm going to continue to operate this podcast, but it's going to be on YouTube and it's going to be on Rumble. But it's going to be awesome. I think it is going to be a lot better than it used to be. It's just going to take some time. Now, there's so much I want to talk about because obviously I've missed a few weeks and everyone's eager to hear my opinion. So I'm going to start. And obviously Jeffrey Epstein's emails is the first starting point today. I'm going to have more shows. And we're going to talk about Venezuela later. We're going to talk about a bunch of stuff happening, obviously the U.S. economy and a bunch of other things. But for this podcast, we're going to focus on Jeffrey Epstein's emails. Now, if you're new to this podcast, like I said, you need to go to the website because some of this is going to be over your head. It's an advanced podcast, and I'm really talking about a covert Soviet plan to basically control the Western world. Okay, so I talked about how the Iron Curtain collapse was faked. I talked about George Soros and this obviously fiasco he engineered. I talked about how he's really a KGB conglomerate, or he's working for the KGB. I talked about how obviously the Russian government is covertly blackmailing people inside the Western world through Jeffrey Epstein and what's before with Robert Maxwell. But none of this, people don't want to talk about that whatsoever. Jeffrey Epstein was clearly Mossad. There's no evidence whatsoever to prove any of this. In fact, if you look at the evidence, there is more than enough evidence to kind of be suspicious that Robert Maxwell was working for the Russians. He was investigated by the FBI a number of times when the FBI and the U.S. was anti-communist. Now, nothing was found, obviously, that they generated any image of, or like they couldn't for sure tell you that this was the case, but it's highly suspicious. It's highly suspicious when he died that Jeffrey Epstein kind of took over his role with his daughter. And how is this all related to anything with blackmail and related to kind of politicians? Well, it's very simple, ladies and gentlemen. If you can control somebody through blackmail, like a president of the United States, and you're a foreign country, you can then coerce this person to do an agenda that benefits your nation. So in the case of Bill Clinton, how did North Korea get its nuclear program? Well, North Korea got its nuclear program when Bill Clinton was on his presidency. Obviously, North Korea, historical relationship with the Soviet Union, and there's your proof, ladies and gentlemen. More proof that people are continuing to ignore are Jeffrey Epstein's emails, where he was on there basically admitting that he was in contact with the Russian government. And this was because he was advising them on how to deal with Donald Trump. So do you think he was going to advise them on how to deal with Hillary Clinton? How would Hillary Clinton's presidency have turned out if she won? Would she have responded the same way to obviously Zelensky's Ukraine crisis? Would she have committed American troops to Ukraine right away? Would there have been a world war right away? Would there have military development that Donald Trump has done? Would there have been issues with North Korea? Would there have been a standoff with North Korea? How would Hillary Clinton have responded to COVID and various other crises? I would tell you this, nothing would have happened the same way like Donald Trump would have happened. In fact, Hillary's presidency would have been a complete disaster, mainly because the Russians would have had complete control over her. And this is obviously blackmail and just one of the equations in regards to this hidden Soviet agenda that people for the life of them just cannot see. Oh yeah, it's all about the CIA. It's all about the U.S. industrial complex. It's all about, Israel. The U.S. has a relationship with Israel. Well, duh. Of course they have a military relationship with Israel. Israel is an ally of theirs. It's a prominent figure in the Middle East. It's a democracy. People have elections there. So of course the United States of America backs anybody in the Western world. There's no difference between any relationship with Israel than South Korea, Japan, and other nations. And of course, people in these groups donate money to the states, and politicians accept some money. So why are we not talking about George Soros and the money that he gives out? Why are we not talking about the Iron Curtain collapse? Why are we? Nobody's talking about any of this stuff. So realistically, people want to see one side of the coin, how the U.S. is evil. They want to see how the Western world is evil, and the Western world is not perfect, but they don't want to see the other side of the coin. And they all want to talk about how the Western world is all the problem with this, with all its kind of, it's being aggressive, it's killing people, all the stuff that it's doing. But they don't want to talk about, well, why does a fence exist? Should we take away this fence? Do we know what this fence kind of is stopping from revealing itself? And people are not being smart about what government they're advocating for if there was no U.S. military industrial complex. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, the Soviet Union could not beat us in war. They're controlling our politicians. It's very clear. I talked about since the beginning of time how they've controlled through blackmail a bunch of our politicians, and they've tried to kill probably those who were pro-American and didn't go along with their blackmail. JFK. I speculate that JFK was killed by the Russians. The information came out that he was killed by the Russians. The information came out that Oswald was basically going down to Cuba, that he was talking about just wet operations, which were assassinations, and nobody wants to talk about that whatsoever. I speculate that JFK was killed because he was put in there at a specific time to kill Israel's nuclear program. Israel at this time was starting to get nuclear weapons, and he was supposed to stop it. He didn't stop it, and therefore he was killed for it. Ronald Reagan, they tried to take him down. Why? Um, America was really powerful at this time, and they tried whatever they could do to stop America. They didn't want Star Wars being created, and he was shot. Um, what else? You have Donald Trump. Donald Trump was shot in the ear. There's been numerous attempts to obviously set up a chance to take him down. And why is this? Because he's an anti-communist. People really have to be able to put all these things together. And unfortunately, this is what I kind of do and what I'm passionate about doing. But really, what are we talking about in relates to blackmail? Well, I've always told you from the beginning that it's my suspicion back in 2008 that Hillary and Obama, when they were both running, there was a secret meeting that happened with George Soros and those two. Now, you're never going to find any information that George Soros was in this meeting, but you will find that a bunch of reporters were brought in an airplane, that Hillary or Obama was supposed to meet them, and nothing happened. They were waiting there, and then it was whisked away, and everybody was disappointed. Now, this secret meeting that happened between Hillary and Obama and Soros, Hillary was told that she was going to go after Obama. Now, as you know, I've always told you that Obama was a planned Soviet plan, which means the Soviets trained him to be in the White House to set up their war and to do things ahead of time. And Hillary was going to be the pin follow guy. And she knew this as soon as this meeting happened, which means during Obama's time in office, and obviously, I guess the 4 years, she kind of was in contact with people from the other side, the Western imperialist forces, and she escaped her presidency, which means she didn't want to be president. I told you from the beginning that it was my theory that Donald Trump was her friend, which is true, and she was basically his replacement, or he was, sorry, he was her replacement. Which means that she couldn't be president. She bailed on her presidency, and the military and crew put Trump in office instead of her to do an agenda that was the opposite of blackmail, which was to benefit the USA. Well, none of this is going to be printed in front page news because blackmail is a very tentative issue. Now, why did the USA, in my point of view, completely kibosh that the Russians killed JFK? Well, at that time, everyone hated the Russians, everyone hated the communists, and JFK was very popular. And if it came out that JFK was killed by the Russians, there would probably have been a war that happened from this. The same thing, obviously, with Ronald Reagan. My suspicions are that there was Russian ties to this. The same thing that I believe there's Russian and Iranian ties to all of this and to Charlie Kirk's killing. But everyone wants to jump that Israel did this. When Israel there's a million people that Israel would like to kill well before Charlie Kirk. And I could list at least 1,000 of them to you right now off the top of my head, including probably George Soros they would like to assassinate. But that none of this matters. So realistically, what I think is happening is that in Joe Biden's presidency, the Russians already signaled. They already did that front page event, which was the first thing that happened on Biden's watch, was Evergreen in the Suez. As you know, Evergreen is Hillary Clinton's Secret Service code name, and I believe that they were signaling, well, the showdown is going to happen when it comes out that Hillary was blackmailed by the Russians, or it comes out that Donald Trump is Hillary's replacement, or something along those lines. The reason is that, and as you know, Obama was setting up this war. There was supposed to be a power structure changing war, which happened because Zelensky was supposed to drag the U.S. into a thermonuclear exchange, obviously with Russia. And as you know, Iran and North Korea were supposed to have EMPs in space that were supposed to kill the electric grid of Israel. They were supposed to kill the electric grid in the USA. They were supposed to create an internal war for obviously control of the USA. And there was supposed to be a power structure changing war that already took place. And none of this has happened already. So right now, the enemy, Russia and China, Iran, they have no idea what's going on, but they've already signaled that if anything comes out that Hillary bailed on her presidency or anything to do with blackmail, Evergreen, Suez, like, listen, ladies and gentlemen, how do you create a world war, or how do you signal for one? You plug up straight off Hormuz and the Suez Canal. It's that simple, ladies and gentlemen. Um, Now, nobody wants to tell you these kind of things, and this is kind of why this podcast has been a success and why I do have thousands of followers, because people are listening to me and going, "How do you know that?" And people are kind of taking it with a grain of salt, and then things are happening, and people are going, "Oh, wow, this is true." And this is why I love doing this, ladies and gentlemen, because I can see things the average person can't. Anyways, that's all for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for subscribing and listening to the show. It's going to be great going forward. Take care.